Hey, comic lovers, welcome back to Back Issues. Happy New Year. Now, you may have noticed that something's off. Well, Thor has been called back to Asgard once again.
Ain't that a shame?
Yep, so unfortunately, we're kicking off the new year without him. Hopefully, he'll be back next week.
You know, he seems to get a lot of vacation time. How is that?
Dog of Thunder gets what he wants. All right, so we are kicking off the new year with a series of episodes entitled The History of Comics, where we're going to be taking you through the different ages of comic books, starting with the Platinum Age. So get ready for a trip back through time, kids. This is Back Issues. Alright, so before we get into today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, turn on your notifications, and leave us a comment. We'd like to hear from you guys.
Sure we did.
Alright, so the Platinum Age of comic books. What can you tell us, old man?
Well, let's back up a second and
alright.
Let's define what we're going to be talking about now. We're going to be talking about sequential art in a magazine format, which means newspaper strips are out. We're going to talk about them a little bit, but it's not the subject.
Okay.
And we're not going to be talking about manga.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't we going to be talking about manga?
We don't like it?
I don't dislike it. I just haven't really gotten into it.
Okay.
So, those of you who love manga, well, first of all, let me explain. There's more manga comic books published than there are non-manga comic books published. I did not know that. But
Japan.
well, not just Japan, but more than 5 times the sale of English normal, what we consider regular comic books. 5 times. Now, just for example, in the United States, who do you think is the largest comic book publisher?
Well, before this conversation, I would have said DC or Marvel.
You probably would have said Marvel, but wrong.
Oh.
It's a good thing you're not doing the quiz. It's actually Viz Media, and they distribute manga comics all over the world, and they're bigger than Marvel or DC in the United States.
All right.
So that was something I learned and was surprised also. But at any rate, since we're going to be breaking these videos down into chapters, one for each age, I decided that we needed to do more than the basic 4. Now, if I were to say, EMoney, what are the 4 ages of comic books, what would you say?
It would be the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and the Modern Age.
And that is what I would have answered also, but there's some other ages where they kind of break it down a little bit further, which suits our purposes a little bit better as far as these videos go. Now, the ages we're going to be using for these videos are, well, the Victorian age, but there's really not enough there to do a whole video on.
Okay.
We just don't know enough about the Victorian age of comics. But we're going to go with the Platinum Age, the Golden Age, the Atomic Age, and that's one I don't know a lot about comics in that era, Silver Age, of course the Bronze Age, the Copper Age, the Extreme Age, and the Movie Age. The Movie Age actually totally makes sense, I get it. But let's go ahead and kick this off with the Platinum Age. So, well, let's not.
No.
Let's go ahead and talk about the first known comic book.
Okay.
That was a comic book called The Adventures of Obadiah Oldbuck. What a name. My sources, which people always ask me, are, what are your sources? So, what the heck? A lot of Wikipedia, and there's a blog called comicattack.net. And these guys are pretty well informed, and I've used them several times in the past. But according to them, that Adventures of Obadiah Old Buck was the first comic, and that's backed up by Wikipedia and just about every other site I went to. Came out in 1837 in Europe, not in English. Was translated to English and distributed in England in 1841. Then it showed up in New York City in 1842. 40 pages, so a little bit bigger than a typical modern comic, but about the same size. It was 8.5 by 11, so about the size of a Golden Age comic. There were 6 to 12 panels on a page, no word balloons. Any text was just printed at the bottom of each panel. Now, like I said, this is the earliest known comic. That's all I got on the Victorian Age, so we're going to skip Victorian Age. And now we're going to get into the Platinum Age.
All right.
Early 1897, which was the beginning of the Platinum Age, a comic book called The Yellow Kid in McFadden's Flats. Another interesting title. What's a yellow kid?
I mean, was he sick?
I don't know. Did he wear yellow clothes? I don't know. And considering how racist things were back then, was he of Japanese ancestry? I don't know. I really don't. I've never read one. But this particular comic was 197 pages long. Good Lord, that's a lot of pages.
I mean, that's a book.
Really?
In a comic book, it's a book.
Yep. It was black and white, and it was smaller than the current 10 by 6 and something inches that we see today. It was only 5.5 by 7.5. We know it was a comic book because on the back cover it said comic book.
Ah, so label it for themselves.
We know for a fact. Now this was a reprint of the Yellow Kid's early adventures in newspaper strips, which a lot of comics back then, that's exactly what they were. Now during the Platinum Age, the size of comic books was all over the place. Then in 1902, Richard Outcault, if I pronounce his name right, who was the creator of the Yellow Kid, also published a comic called Buster Brown. Now, some of us old folk have heard of Buster Brown. There was even shoes called Buster Brown shoes. But since Buster Brown was successful, other people started jumping on the bandwagon and copying it. And they did about you had Little Nemo, the Katzenjammer Kids, and Happy Hooligan. Now these were usually hardcover. Some cost as much as 50 cents. You know, if you consider Action Comics #1 was 10 cents, 50 cents was a lot. That was a lot for a comic.
Hope I'm getting my money's worth.
Yeah. And these were 17 by 11 format, so they were pretty big sized. Now, Bud Fisher's Mutt and Jeff changed what was the standard format in 1910 to a 15 by 5 format.
So that was like really long, right?
Yeah, really wide. And then, of course, other comics started copying that because that was popular.
Now, most of these, they just reprinted like the comic strips and put them page to page.
That's what Mutt and Jeff was. It was mostly just reprints.
Reminded me a lot of the old Garfield comics or books I used to read.
Calvin and Hobbes, we had some of those too.
All right.
Now, Mutt and Jeff was very popular. It has stayed in print in either newspaper or comics all the way up until 1982. So that's a long run.
I remember one of our regular yard sale customers was a big Mutt and Jeff collector, always asking about those.
Finally found him one comic book.
Yep.
One. So, in the Platinum Age, comic books usually came out whenever a publisher felt like he had something he could sell. Just whenever.
Kind of feels like when they put out new seasons of Doctor Who. Just whenever they feel like it.
Or the way some of the Image guys worked for a while. But that's not what this video is about.
Okay.
They were very irregular in showing up at the newsstand or whatever places stole comic books. Then behold, a comic book called Comics Monthly. So, needless to say, that comic came out every month.
All right.
At least for a year. It came out January through December in 1922, but that was one of the first monthly comics. Now, like you said, most comic books back then were reprints of comic strips, of newspaper strips.
Mm-hmm.
In 1933, along comes the first comic with all original stories. And it was called, I love this name, Detective Dan, Secret Operative number 48. It's a one-shot published by Norman Marsh. And a lot of my sources said that they suspect, no proof, but they suspect that Detective Comics was named because of Detective Dan. Who knows? All right, so 1930s. The Great Depression is just kicking everybody's butt. It's got the creative community in a death grip. So a lot of people had to choose. Do I want to go buy some comic books, or do I want to have food in the house? What do you think they did?
Probably didn't bode too well for the comic industry.
No, it did not. So the creators just basically to stay busy and keep their hand, figuring that the Depression wouldn't last forever, they started putting out free comic books. Now, one of the first ones was called Funnies on Parade. Now, the reasons they published these free comic books, or were able to, is kind of strange. Now, my dad, your granddad, worked at the Courier-Journal from the time he got out of the Navy after World War II ended, all the way up until he retired. And he worked in the print room.
Mm-hmm.
He helped run the presses. Now, he never told me, but it seems that it was more expensive to shut the presses down, let them sit for a while, then start them back up, than it was to just keep them running. Who knew? So, the publishing houses decided that, let's just keep them running. We'll put out some free stuff, maybe get a little money on advertising, and generate maybe a little bit of goodwill while we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the ones they put out, like I said, was Funnies on Parade. Came out in 1933 using that modern 8x11 format. And 1 million copies were given away within the first few weeks. Most of them were newspaper inserts. Also in the early 30s, we saw one of the most significant events in comic book history. A couple of young guys, you probably heard of them. Siegel and Schuster. They actually created Superman. Now, I know Action number 1 didn't come out till 1938, but they started working on the character early. Now, this isn't a comic book.
Mm-hmm.
This is a novel that I've had since I was young.
Mm-hmm.
This was published in 1942. I wasn't around in 1942. I'm not that old. But I probably had this in 1958, 59. It was one of the first books I read, and I read it all the way through in one day.
Oh, wow.
I just love this thing. Mm. This was back when Superman actually leaped over tall buildings,
mm-hmm.
and he got hit by a torpedo and it almost killed him.
Oh.
So a more down-to-earth Superman in those days. But at any rate, I just put it up there because, I don't know, I want y'all to see it. At any rate, so Siegel and Schuster started working on Superman.
Yeah, I've actually done a little bit of, watched some documentaries, biographies on Jerry and Joe, and early versions of Superman before Action number 1. In one version, it was called Reign of the Superman. And in this version, they got the term Superman from a Nietzsche publication. Friedrich Nietzsche is a scientist, where he coined the phrase the Uberman. He was German, I believe. And so they like that word, the Uberman, the Superman. So not knowing what to do with it at first, they came up with a story of not a hero, but a villainous character who uses not his super strength, which would be later on, but his super telepathic abilities to take over the world. And if you see the cover, I'm going to put it up here if I can find it, where it's a picture of a man with a giant-sized brain looking over the cowering world below.
Interesting. So, needless to say, Siegel and Schuster didn't show up with this guy right away.
No.
So
Had some fine tuning there.
So in the early 30s, they self-published a couple things. Now, what do you think that would be worth? I doubt any of those exist, to be honest. So while they kept working on a character, they worked on other projects. Their actually first comic book work that was published on a large scale was in New Fun number 6. And it wasn't Superman. It was a character called Dr. Occult, some sort of magician. I wouldn't mind getting my hands on one of those, too. Now, up until 1938, most comic books were truly comic books or funny books, as I've also heard them referred to. And they featured funny animals and comical characters and comical situations. Some examples would be Barney Google, Bringing Up Father, Happy Hooligan. Then in the mid-30s, we started getting movies with swashbuckling heroes like Errol Flynn and Captain Blood. And then in the newspaper strips, Lee Falk started publishing The Phantom. So if other mediums are going to start doing heroic adventures, what are comic books going to do?
Fans of 1990s superhero films, if you remember the Billy Zane Phantom movie, you maybe didn't know that he's been around for a really long time, like even before Superman.
Yeah, long time.
Yeah.
So, in wrapping up, there may not be a lot of affordable comics for collectors from the Platinum Age, because I've only seen a couple in my life. But it was a critical time for the development of comic books and the art form. This time period saw the first monthly comic book, the first color comic, the first original content, and the beginning of superhero comics. So, next week,
we're going to kick off the next episode in our series with the Golden Age of Comics. And we started off with Action number one. It's a reprint. Don't bring it into my house. It's a reprint. It's worth maybe $10. Okay,
maybe.
Don't freak out.
So,
all right. So that concludes this segment of Back Issues. So normally this is the part where we go up to the garage to see Thor, but
I don't have to even get out this chair.
So, but let's do the spinning thing anyways.
Oh, okay. Ready?
Whoa!
Oh, woo!
I think I did a similar effect for one of the first films I did in high school. It was just as convincing back then.
Yeah, I think we're okay without the dog. That was fun.
All right, so time for our Stump the Old Man segment. And if you were expecting a platinum...
Wait a minute. Since we don't have the dog, you're probably not going to do a Thor or an animal-related question. Let's do Stump the EMoney.
No.
Why not?
Because I come up with the questions.
I don't have any questions anyway, but I think we need to start thinking about that.
Okay. Now, if you were expecting a Platinum Age themed segment of Stump the Old Man, you'll be sorely disappointed because I could not come up with that. And I think you would have been 0 for 3.
Yeah.
Pretty safe bet.
Unless you ask me questions that I've already said, no, I didn't have a shot.
All right, so question number 1. By what name is the Marvel mutant Roberto da Costa better known?
Well, I read the very first issue of the New Mutants, and I don't know if they referred to him by this name in the movie, but no.
I don't think so.
No. Sunspot.
That is correct. And I have no follow-up to that answer, but that is correct.
He's got no juice.
No. All right, number 2. Not solely comic book related, but it's in the ballpark. What actor starred alongside Bruce Lee as the Green Hornet in the 1966 TV series?
Okay, you know how we call people that guy?
Uh-huh.
It's somebody who's in a lot of stuff, like one episode in this show, one episode in that show, but never really do enough that you get their name implanted in your brain. Well, this guy was that guy.
Oh.
Now,
For playing an iconic character, still be referred to as that guy?
I mean, how long did the Green Hornet go on? It
26 episodes.
Yeah, it didn't last very long. And his first name was Van. But since the only Van actor that I can remember his name is Van Johnson, but I know that's not right.
That is incorrect.
Of course it is.
You were correct about being incorrect.
So I was right.
Okay. The answer was Van Williams, and he starred as the Green Hornet from 1966 to 1967, so did not last too long at all.
Neither did he, I don't think.
Can you tell me what the name of the Green Hornet show was in China?
Is this question number 3?
No, this is a bonus question.
Figures, I know the answer to this one. They called it The Kato Show.
Because, Bruce Lee was
extremely popular.
All right, so number 3. Which iconic superhero love interest once served as Tony Stark's personal assistant?
Well, I didn't read any stories with this character being Tony Stark's personal assistant, but somehow I read about, I don't know if they referred to it in a different comic, but it was good old Mary Jane.
That is correct. Spider-Man's main love interest and later his wife takes a job at Stark Industries after Iron Man and Doctor Doom destroy her nightclub trying to subdue Madame Mask. Tony offers her the job both as an apology and out of his need for a competent personal assistant. So that's 2 out of 3. The old man wins this week.
Again. Wins again. Again. Now, I could see Mary Jane being a model. I could see her running a nightclub. I mean, I think she was doing that in Superior Spider-Man for a while. I don't see her being some guy's personal assistant.
I mean, in another version, she's a reporter for the Daily Bugle. So
I can even see that, not so much, but I can't see the personal assistant. So whatever.
Oh, there it is. All right, so that about does it for this episode. Like we said, we are going to be continuing our series for the history of comic books with the Golden Age next week. And kicking that off, of course, with action number 1. Yeah. Before we go, I want to let you know, we would love to hear some suggestions for a new episode you'd like to see. We have a short list of stuff we're going to be doing, and of course we have our series that we're going to be doing for the next couple of weeks. Maybe take a few intermittent breaks to do a few other things. If we
don't have to do
all in a row
straight history of comics.
Yeah. So might throw a few other things. So if you have suggestions for other episodes, let us know in the comment section. All right. So Happy New Year, guys. Hope you guys join us again next week. Oh, also, later this week, we have a new video we're going to be doing where we review the comic books that come out every Wednesday and tell you guys what we thought of them. So,
Jody Hickerson, this is your fault. You suggested we do this, and I said it was too expensive. So, I commit to doing it, and the first week that we decided to do it, way too many comic books came out. So this is on you. You need to give me money.
All right. So stay tuned for that video and for next week's history of comic books. We'll see you guys then. Excelsior.
True believers, read more comics.